The morning sun spilled its golden rays over the sprawling mansion of Mr. Albert Kensington, a wealthy businessman who was known not just for his empire of investments but also for his obsession with collecting the rarest and most luxurious cars ever built. Yet, for all his riches, one particular vehicle had tormented him for years, a 1940 Rolls-Royce Phantom 3, a machine of unrivaled elegance, one that once belonged to a royal family overseas before finding its way into his private garage. It wasn't just any antique, it was a legacy piece, a symbol of power, wealth, and prestige. But there was a problem. The car had been broken for over a decade, and despite summoning the finest engineers, mechanics, and Rolls-Royce specialists from across Europe and America, no one had been able to bring it back to life. The engine was dead, its system stubborn, as though the machine itself had sworn never to be touched again. Some whispered it was cursed, others said it was impossible to repair because of its rarity, but Mr. Kensington would not give up. He believed someone, somewhere, could breathe life into it again. That very morning, experts from London had flown in once more, equipped with state-of-the-art tools, diagnostic machines, and years of expertise. They circled the grand vehicle inside Kensington's private showroom, scratching their heads, exchanging murmured technical jargon, but the outcome was the same: silence from the engine, stillness from the heart of the beast. Kensington's frustration echoed through the hall as he paced back and forth, demanding answers, his voice heavy with disappointment. "You call yourselves experts, yet my car remains nothing but a lifeless statue. I've wasted millions on you, and still, nothing." His words struck like daggers, and the men lowered their heads in shame, unable to meet his piercing gaze. For Kensington, it wasn't about money anymore. It was about pride. It was about proving that even time could not defeat his will. Unbeknownst to him, in the farthest corner of that same showroom, broom in hand and rag tucked into his belt, stood Daniel, the janitor. A man of quiet demeanor, dressed in worn-out clothes and faded shoes, he was invisible to the grand guests who came and went through the mansion. No one paid him any mind, no one considered his presence worth acknowledging, for in their eyes he was just a cleaner, someone who swept the floors and dusted the corners while they handled the important work. Yet, Daniel carried a quiet dignity. Life had not been kind to him, but his spirit remained unbroken. His wife had passed away years ago, leaving him to raise his only daughter, Lily, who was now 15. He worked day and night, scrubbing floors, carrying loads, fixing leaks, and doing anything he could to provide her with food, books, and a chance at education. That afternoon, after school, Lily wandered into the showroom, her bright eyes widening at the sight of the magnificent vehicle that towered before her. She had always been fascinated by machines, old radios, broken bicycles, rusty engines her father sometimes brought home from the junkyard. She had a natural gift, a mind sharp as steel, with a curiosity that pushed her to take apart and rebuild anything she could get her hands on. When she looked at the Rolls-Royce, she didn't just see an old car, she saw a challenge, a puzzle, something that whispered to her like a secret waiting to be uncovered. She ran her hand gently across its polished chrome grille, almost reverently, as though the machine was alive and breathing under her touch. Her father noticed and hurried to her side. "Lily, don't," he whispered, glancing nervously toward the experts and Mr. Kensington, who were still deep in heated discussion. "This isn't ours. We're just here to clean." But Lily, with her usual spark, smiled softly. "Papa, it's beautiful. It's like it's asking to be fixed. Do you think I could ever learn to repair something like this?" Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to say yes, but the world had taught him that dreams were luxuries they could barely afford. Still, he didn't want to extinguish the fire in his daughter's eyes. One day, maybe. But not here, not now. Yet fate has a way of bending rules. As the experts once again failed to get the car started, Kensington, red with anger, dismissed them in fury. "Out! All of you! Useless, every last one of you!" The men gathered their tools, their pride shattered, and filed out of the showroom. Silence followed, broken only by the echo of Kensington's heavy sighs. Daniel, ever invisible, quietly continued sweeping the corner, but Lily lingered by the car, her eyes still fixed on it, her mind already racing with possibilities. She had seen the experts fiddling with the wrong parts, missing details, ignoring signs. To her, the car wasn't dead, it was misunderstood. She bent down and peered at the underside, noticing the tiniest details: wires frayed, connections corroded, a forgotten valve stuck in place. Her heart pounded. She whispered to herself, "They're all looking at the wrong thing." Her father caught her kneeling and tugged at her sleeve, whispering, "Lily, come. Don't get us into trouble." But before she could answer, Kensington's sharp voice cut through the air. "What are you doing there, girl?" The room froze. Lily's cheeks flushed as she slowly stood up, brushing the dust off her hands. She expected to be scolded, maybe thrown out. Daniel stepped forward, bowing his head quickly, trying to shield her. "I'm sorry, sir, she's just curious. She didn't mean any harm." But Kensington's eyes narrowed as he studied the girl. He had seen that look before. That intense gaze of someone who was thinking, calculating, solving. It was the same look he once had in his youth when he built his empire from nothing. Lily swallowed hard, her hands trembling, but her voice, though soft, did not waver. I don't know everything, sir. But I think they were focusing on the wrong parts of the engine. I saw some things that didn't look right." The room fell into silence. Kensington raised a brow, almost amused, almost offended. "You mean to tell me, a 15-year-old schoolgirl believes she knows better than men who have studied Rolls-Royces their entire lives?" The air was thick with tension. Daniel's heart raced, wishing he could disappear. But Lily, gathering every ounce of courage she had, nodded. "I don't know if I'm right. But I'd like to try." Kensington laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "This is madness. Utter madness." Yet something in him, a small whisper of doubt against all the experts, made him pause. For years, no one had succeeded. What harm could it do to let a janitor's daughter try, if only to prove her wrong? He crossed his arms. "Fine. Go ahead. Show me what you think you know. But mark my words, girl, if you fail, you and your father will be out of here by tonight." Daniel's face turned pale. "Sir, please," he began, but Lily touched his hand gently, her eyes filled with quiet determination. "Papa, trust me," she whispered. Trembling, she stepped toward the car, the weight of every eye in the room pressing down on her. Her fingers brushed the hood as though greeting an old friend, her mind whirring with every bit of knowledge she had collected from books, scraps, and late-night experiments in their small apartment. She took a deep breath, rolled up her sleeves, and began. As her small hands worked their way through the intricate systems, silence enveloped the room. Kensington watched closely, curiosity battling skepticism. Daniel stood frozen, torn between fear for his daughter and awe at her courage. Every twist of a screw, every adjustment she made, seemed impossibly precise for someone so young. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, until finally, Lily stepped back, wiping the grease from her fingers onto her school uniform. Her heart thundered in her chest as she looked at Kensington. "Try it now," she said softly. The key turned. For a moment, nothing. The silence deepened, so thick you could almost hear it breathe. Then, a cough, a groan, a roar. The engine sputtered to life, coughing out years of silence, and then settled into a smooth, steady hum, like a beast awakened from its slumber. The entire showroom seemed to shake with the sound. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Kensington's mouth fell open. For the first time in a decade, the 1940 Rolls-Royce Phantom 3 was alive again. And in that moment, the janitor's daughter, just 15 years old, had done what no expert in the world could achieve. The engine's low, steady growl reverberated through the marble-floored showroom like a heartbeat long thought extinct. For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. It was as if the entire house held its breath in awe of the 15-year-old girl who had resurrected a machine that the world's finest experts had declared impossible to fix. Daniel stood frozen, his mop clattering to the floor unnoticed as tears brimmed in his eyes. His daughter, his little Lily, who once tinkered with broken toasters and rusted bicycles in the tiny kitchen of their apartment, had just achieved what million-dollar machines and seasoned engineers could not. He wanted to scoop her into his arms, but he dared not interrupt the weight of the moment. Mr. Kensington was not a man easily impressed. He had built an empire through cunning, precision, and sheer willpower. His life was a chain of victories, and yet, here before him, he found himself utterly humbled by a girl who had walked in with schoolbooks in her bag and grease on her hands. He approached slowly, the sound of his polished shoes echoing against the tiles. He circled the car, listened to the purr of the revived engine, and then fixed his piercing gaze on Lily. "How?" he asked, his voice quiet, stripped of arrogance, filled instead with a genuine hunger for understanding. Lily shifted nervously, wiping her hands against her dress. "It wasn't as complicated as they made it," she said softly. "The parts they were focusing on were fine. The real problem was deeper, an overlooked valve that was stuck, some corroded connections, and an alignment that hadn't been checked in years. The car wasn't broken, sir. It was just neglected." Her words carried a wisdom far beyond her years. Kensington narrowed his eyes, but instead of anger, there was respect flickering within them. The gathered staff, who had been silent witnesses, began to murmur in disbelief. News spread quickly through the mansion like wildfire. The janitor's daughter fixed the Rolls-Royce. Servants, drivers, and guards peered into the showroom to catch a glimpse of the girl who had achieved the impossible. Whispers grew into astonishment, and astonishment into admiration. Daniel shifted uneasily, knowing how quickly admiration could turn into envy, how a world so entrenched in class and wealth could turn its back on those who came from nothing. Kensington's silence finally broke. "Girl," he said sternly, though his tone carried none of the venom it once held, "do you realize what you've done? This car has been dead for over a decade. Experts from around the world, men who have studied at the finest institutions, have failed me. And you, a janitor's daughter," he trailed off, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Daniel feared the worst. That Kensington would see this as an embarrassment, that he would cast them both out for daring to prove him wrong. He stepped forward, bowing his head. "Sir, please, she didn't mean any disrespect. I'll make sure." But Kensington raised a hand, silencing him. "Respect," he said, almost laughing. "There is no disrespect in genius." He turned his gaze back to Lily. "What's your name, girl?" She swallowed nervously, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lily. Lily Carter." Kensington repeated it slowly, as if carving it into memory. "Lily Carter. A name I will not forget." From that moment on, Lily's life began to change. Kensington ordered that she and her father be taken care of, moving them from their small apartment into a comfortable cottage on the estate grounds. It wasn't charity, it was recognition. Talent like this must not be wasted, he declared. He offered Lily access to his vast library of automotive books, old blueprints, and mechanical journals collected over decades. For the first time, Lily found herself surrounded by resources that matched her hunger for knowledge. Yet, with opportunity came scrutiny. The news of what had happened could not be contained within the walls of Kensington's mansion. Word traveled quickly, carried by gossip and awe. Soon newspapers began sniffing for the story, headlines asking, "Could a 15-year-old girl outwit the world's finest engineers?" Reporters crowded the gates, demanding to see the prodigy. Mechanics and engineers scoffed, calling it a trick, a fluke, a coincidence. How could a girl with no training surpass years of education and expertise? The whispers of doubt grew louder, and Kensington, ever the strategist, saw an opportunity. He arranged for a public demonstration. In 2 weeks' time, Lily would be brought before some of the finest engineers, collectors, and industrialists of the country to showcase her talent. It was risky. If she failed, she would be ridiculed, and her father disgraced. But if she succeeded, the world would have no choice but to acknowledge her gift. Daniel was terrified. "Lily, you don't have to do this," he pleaded. "It's enough that you fixed the car. Don't let them use you like this." But Lily, her eyes burning with quiet determination, shook her head. "Papa, all my life I've been invisible, just like you. Maybe this is our chance. Our chance to be seen." The day of the demonstration arrived. The grand hall of the Kensington estate was transformed into a theater of machines. Rare cars gleamed under chandeliers, engines roared as demonstrations were given, and the air buzzed with skepticism and curiosity. At the center stood the 1940 Rolls-Royce Phantom 3, polished to perfection, its engine now alive and proud thanks to the hands of a young girl. The audience was filled with aristocrats, journalists, and skeptics. At the front sat a panel of engineers, men who had tried and failed to fix the car themselves. Their eyes were sharp, their expressions doubtful, ready to watch her fail. Kensington, dressed in his finest suit, stood before the crowd and declared, "Ladies and gentlemen, you are about to witness something extraordinary." Gasps rippled through the room as Lily stepped forward. Dressed simply, her hair tied back, her hands slightly trembling, she looked out at the sea of faces. She was just 15, yet the weight of the world pressed on her shoulders. She approached the Rolls-Royce and began explaining, her voice steady despite her fear. She detailed the problems she had found, the solutions she had applied, and the principles behind her methods. She spoke not as a child, but as an equal to the experts, her knowledge flowing with clarity and passion. Then came the moment of truth. She climbed into the car, turned the key, and the engine roared to life once again, louder and prouder than ever before. The crowd erupted in shock. Some clapped reluctantly, others cheered openly. The panel of engineers sat stunned, their skepticism shattered. One of them, an older man with silver hair, finally stood and approached her. "Child," he said, his voice shaking with awe, "you have a gift. A gift that cannot be taught in any school. Guard it well." Tears welled in Daniel's eyes as he watched from the side, pride swelling in his chest. His daughter was no longer invisible. She was a light, shining so brightly that the world could no longer ignore her. Kensington placed a hand on her shoulder, addressing the crowd. "Remember this day. For today, a janitor's daughter has rewritten what you believed possible." From that day forward, Lily Carter's name spread across the nation. Universities reached out, offering scholarships. Car manufacturers sought her advice. Inventors wanted to work with her. But Lily, grounded by her father's humble love, never let pride consume her. She continued to learn, to build, to dream. She knew her journey had only just begun. And as father and daughter walked home together that night, the stars above them seemed brighter than ever. "Papa," she whispered, clutching his hand, "do you think Mama would be proud?" Daniel's voice broke as he answered, "She would be prouder than anyone in this world." The story of Lily Carter became more than just the tale of a girl fixing a car. It became a story of hope, of resilience, of how brilliance can rise from the humblest places. It reminded everyone that greatness is not bound by wealth, status, or age, but by the courage to try when the world tells you it's impossible. And so, the janitor's daughter, armed with nothing but her hands, her heart, and her unyielding spirit, stepped into a future that even she had never dared to imagine.